The final piece of API design is to add in API notebooks. They'll help us teach the consumers of this how to use the API. So in Exchange, we simply go in and add a new page. Let's call this our customer get notebook. When we go into that notebook, we'll add a description that tells the user first you need to make a connection to the API. And so we add in a notebook block, and here we see it in markdown mode, but if we flip over to the visual mode, we see what it looks like. And so now I can click play, and what that does, it'll execute creating a client against our API that we have, and we get back the return 0. The next step then would be to say, now you can invoke a method. And then the next thing would be to type in client.customers.get. And that's all we have to do, and we could execute the get against the customer just like we did in the API console. So we save that as a draft. Okay. And now we have a customer get notebook page out here that somebody could play to find out what happens. That goes along with the other documentation that we have, as well as being able to exercise the console from within the notebook as well. In summary, the Design Center gives us a lot of capabilities. I can, of course, define my APIs, but I don't have to start from scratch. I can leverage those reusable assets, those reusable fragments that are contained in Exchange, discover them easily, and include them in my API design. I've got that out-of-the-box API console that eliminates me having to use a Postman or SoapUI or something like that, and someone that's looking at the API can explore it immediately without any third-party tools. I can turn on that mock service that allows me to provide an endpoint to the consumers that returns data when they invoke the various methods on the resources without having to build anything else out related to the API. And finally, we're able to publish those things out to Exchange without having to go to another site or anything like that. Just click the Publish to Exchange button. Now that API is out there and discoverable through the consumers within the environment. And maybe the most important part, in today's world especially, is that I can support XML and JSON from one spec. One of the unique things about RAML is that I can define what a customer looks like, and from one spec support XML and JSON consumers. So you don't have to worry any longer about keeping your XML schemas in line with your JSON schemas. Now, from one RAML definition, you can support one definition throughout that life cycle. And so what we really covered today was how we can define APIs using API Designer, how we can simulate that with a mocking service and let the consumers hit it without anything behind it. They can explore the API using the API console. And finally, they're able to learn how to use the methods on the APIs through those API notebooks.